Picture this. Imagine a scenario, a life, a reality unfolding before your eyes. You're a Chinese oil executive, a key player in a global industry, navigating the complexities of international business. You find yourself stationed in Niger, a land of vast landscapes and untapped potential, a nation brimming with both challenges and opportunities. Earning over $8,600 a month, a substantial income that reflects your expertise and the value you bring to the table. You're deeply involved, boots on the ground, working diligently on the West African oil pipeline, a project of immense scale and significance, a vital artery for the region's economy. Life is good, comfortable, secure, and filled with the promise of continued success and prosperity. You've built a life here, a routine, a sense of belonging. Until March 2025, when everything you've come to expect, everything you've worked for, is suddenly thrown into disarray. When the government suddenly, without warning, takes drastic action that will forever alter the course of your life and career, expels you and your colleagues. You're given little notice, forced to pack your bags and leave behind the life you've built. The reason? The explanation behind this sudden and dramatic shift in policy? Your Nigerian counterpart, the local employee working alongside you, contributing to the same project, sharing the same responsibilities, earns just $1,200, a fraction of your salary, a stark illustration of the economic disparities that plague the region. For the same job, the same skills, the same effort, the same dedication, yet vastly different compensation. This wasn't a clerical error, not an oversight, not a mistake in the payroll department. It was a message, a deliberate act, a calculated move, a statement of intent. The new military leadership, the power now in control, was sending a clear signal to the international community. Was done with foreign companies, with the established order, with the status quo that had long favored international interests over local needs, exploiting local workers. They were no longer willing to tolerate the exploitation of their citizens, the widening gap between the haves and have-nots. Expelling the Chinese executives, the most visible symbol of this imbalance, was a dramatic and undeniable act, was a bold declaration, a defiant stand against the forces that had long shaped Niger's economic landscape. Niger's resources, its vast reserves of oil and other valuable commodities, and opportunities, the potential for growth and prosperity that lay dormant for so long, would now benefit, would be channeled towards, would be prioritized for its own people. The citizens of Niger, the men and women who toiled in the fields, worked in the factories, and dreamed of a better future for their children. The crackdown didn't stop there. This was just the beginning of a comprehensive effort to reshape the nation's economic policies. The government shut down, took decisive action against establishments that were deemed to be operating outside the bounds of the law. The Beijing-built Solux International Hotel, a symbol of foreign investment and luxury in the heart of Niamey, citing violations and discrimination, allegations of unfair labor practices and discriminatory treatment of local employees. The hotel's closure, a highly visible and symbolic act, sent ripples throughout the business community, was another warning, a clear and unambiguous message to all foreign entities operating within Niger's borders. Respect local laws, adhere to the regulations, and treat the Nigerian people with fairness and dignity, or leave. If you're unwilling to play by our rules, then you're no longer welcome here. For decades, for far too long, Niger had been subject to the whims of external forces. Foreign corporations, multinational giants, had exerted undue influence over the nation's economy and political landscape. Dictated terms in Niger. They set the prices, they controlled the resources, and they reaped the lion's share of the profits. Now, the tables were turning, the balance of power was shifting, and Niger was reclaiming its sovereignty. The junta was unafraid, undeterred by the potential consequences of challenging the established order. To challenge global powers, to stand up for its rights, and to chart its own course in the world, signaling a new era, a new chapter in Niger's history, a period of transformation and self-discovery, of national self-determination, a commitment to taking control of its own destiny and shaping its own future. This was far more than, a labor dispute, a simple disagreement between employer and employee. It was the start of a radical shift, a fundamental change in the way Niger approached its relationship with the rest of the world. In how Niger would do business, a new model, a new approach, a new set of priorities. The message was clear, unambiguous, undeniable, and impossible to ignore. Play by Niger's rules, respect our laws, and treat our people with fairness and equity. Or get out. If you're not willing to adapt, then you're no longer welcome here. International boardrooms took notice. Executives around the world were paying close attention to the events unfolding in Niger. The era of unchecked, of unlimited power and influence wielded by foreign corporations. Foreign influence was ending. A new dawn was breaking, and the old order was crumbling. Niger's new leaders, the men and women now at the helm of the nation, were determined, resolute in their commitment to building a better future for their country, to put their people first, to prioritize the needs and aspirations of the Nigerian people above all else. No matter the cost, they were willing to make sacrifices, to endure hardship, to face any challenge in pursuit of their vision. The world was watching, observing with keen interest as Niger embarked on this bold new path, as Niger rewrote the rules, redefined the terms of engagement, and asserted its right to self-determination. This was the opening act, the first scene in a drama that would unfold on the world stage, of a bold, uncertain future. A future filled with both promise and peril, a future that would be shaped by the choices Niger made in the days and years to come. To truly understand the seismic shift in Niger's new direction, we need to delve into the circumstances that led to this pivotal moment in the nation's history. It's a story of deep-seated frustrations, a yearning for self-determination, and a bold move to redefine its place on the global stage. Let's rewind to July 2023. This was not just another month, it was a turning point, a moment etched in the annals of Niger's political landscape. The events of this month would reverberate far beyond its borders, impacting regional stability and international relations. The Presidential Guard, the very force entrusted with the safety and security of the nation's leader, led by General Abdurrahman Tiani, a figure who would soon become synonymous with this dramatic power shift, ousted President Mohamed Bazoum, a democratically elected leader whose fate would be abruptly altered. In a swift and decisive move, they seized power, effectively dismantling the existing government and ushering in a new era of uncertainty. This wasn't just a coup, it was a symptom of deeper issues, a reflection of the simmering discontent within Nigerian society. It was a rejection, a resounding no to the status quo that had long defined Niger's political and economic landscape. Of the old order, an order perceived by many as perpetuating inequality and hindering true progress. An order closely tied to France, the former colonial power, and the U.S., both of whom had significant influence in the region. Many Nigerians felt, after years of international partnerships and foreign aid, foreign partnerships brought little security or prosperity to their daily lives. The promises of development seemed to fade into the background. The streets erupted in celebration, a surprising turn of events that underscored the depth of public sentiment. With hopes for real change, a collective aspiration for a brighter future, free from the constraints of the past. The new junta, now at the helm, calling itself the CNSP, the National Council for the Safeguard of the Homeland, promised to reclaim Niger's sovereignty, asserting its right to chart its own course without external interference, and break free from neo-colonial influence, a term used to describe the lingering effects of colonialism on newly independent nations. They argued that old agreements favored outsiders, benefiting foreign entities at the expense of the Nigerian people, not Nigerians. The coup reset Niger's global relationships, fundamentally altering its interactions with the international community, putting it on a collision course with the West. France and the U.S. refused to recognize the junta, deeming the power grab illegitimate and a threat to democratic principles. While ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States, imposed sanctions, hoping to pressure the junta to relinquish power and restore constitutional order. But the junta stood firm, unwavering in its resolve to implement its vision for Niger's future. Seeing international backlash as proof they were on the right path, a validation of their actions in the face of global condemnation. July 2023 marked the start of Niger's revolution in foreign and domestic policy, a complete overhaul of the nation's approach to governance and its place in the world. With ties to the West severed, Niger's leaders turned to Russia. Russia offered security support without lectures on democracy, a deal that appealed to the junta's desire for sovereignty. Niger joined Mali and Burkina Faso in the alliance of Sahel states, forming a new anti-Western bloc. In March 2024, Niger ended its military pact with the U.S., forcing American troops and drones out. Russian military instructors soon arrived, welcomed as partners. The message, Western military presence was over, Niger would choose its own allies. This pivot was more than a security shift, it was a declaration of independence from Western influence. Niger was now charting its own course in a multipolar world. The diplomatic pivot, a seismic shift in Niger's foreign policy, marked a clear departure from its long-standing alliances. This reorientation wasn't just a change of partners, it was a fundamental reassessment of the nation's priorities and its place on the global stage. This pivot triggered a wave of expulsions, a dramatic and decisive act that sent ripples throughout the international community. The new government, asserting its authority, began to systematically remove individuals and organizations perceived as threats to its sovereignty. The expulsions were explicitly targeting Western power, signaling a rejection of the influence and interference that had long characterized Niger's relationship with the West. It was a bold statement of independence and self-determination. In August 2023, the situation escalated rapidly, marking a turning point in Niger's relations with the international community. The junta ordered with unwavering resolve a series of actions that would redefine Niger's future, most notably the French ambassador to leave. This demand was not merely a diplomatic request, it was a firm assertion of Niger's sovereignty. France refused, initially digging in its heels and challenging the legitimacy of the junta's authority, but eventually retreated, a decision made under immense pressure and scrutiny. This retreat was a symbolic victory for Niger, a powerful demonstration of its newfound resolve and independence. Following the ambassador's departure, French aid organizations which had long operated within Niger found themselves under increasing scrutiny. Organizations like ACTED, which had been providing crucial assistance to vulnerable populations, were caught in the crossfire. They were next in line to face the consequences of the junta's new policies. Their licenses were revoked, effectively halting their operations and leaving a void in the humanitarian sector. The organizations were accused of undermining the nation's stability and interfering in its internal affairs. Niger's interests, according to the junta, were paramount, and any perceived threat to those interests would be met with swift and decisive action. Even humanitarian aid, which is typically considered neutral and impartial, was no longer immune to the political machinations of the new regime. Everything was now subject to politics, viewed through the lens of national security and sovereignty. The U.S. faced a similar predicament as its relationship with Niger deteriorated rapidly. The country seemed destined for the same fate, a complete severing of ties. Ultimately, its military base was shut down, a significant blow to U.S. influence in the region. This closure left a strategic vacuum, raising concerns about regional security and the fight against terrorism. For the junta, however, these actions were not seen as losses but as necessary steps. Each expulsion was a deliberate and calculated move, a step toward true sovereignty, free from external interference and control. Western diplomats who had long enjoyed privileged status, aid workers who had been providing essential services, and soldiers who had been stationed in the country for years, were systematically removed, one by one, from Niger's territory. Each departure was celebrated by the junta and its supporters as a win for national pride and self-determination. It was seen as a crucial step towards securing Niger's independence from foreign influence. The government made it clear this was not a temporary measure but a fundamental shift in policy. Niger would decide its own destiny, charting a new course free from external pressures. The government would carefully select who stayed, based on their contribution to Niger's development, and those deemed detrimental to the nation's interests would be asked to leave. The era of Western dominance, with its legacy of colonialism and exploitation, was definitively over, marking a profound shift in the balance of power. The country was now embarking on a path of self-reliance and national renewal, rewriting its own rules and shaping its own future, free from external constraints. The world watched with bated breath, unsure of what the future held for Niger, as Niger systematically dismantled the structures of foreign influence, severing ties that had bound it to the West for decades, reshaping its identity. A new, uncertain chapter in Niger's history had begun, filled with both promise and peril. A new era had begun, one defined by self-determination and a resolute commitment to shaping its own destiny. At the heart of Niger's revolution was economic sovereignty. The junta's Niger First policy aimed to ensure the country's resources benefited its people, not foreign corporations. In June 2025, Niger nationalized the Somaire uranium mine, ending decades of French control. The government also cracked down on foreign oil companies, enforcing new laws that prioritized local hiring and fair pay. The message: Nigerians would no longer accept exploitative contracts. The goal was to build local capacity and create real opportunities at home. Economic independence was now as important as political freedom. Niger was determined to transform itself from a resource supplier to a nation that reaps its own rewards. Asserting sovereignty meant tightening control over who entered and stayed in Niger. In January 2025, strict new immigration laws were enacted, requiring all foreigners to have valid documents at all times. Violators faced harsh penalties, including expulsion and heavy fines. The crackdown extended to anyone hosting foreigners, making the public responsible for reporting guests. Niger was sending a message: only those who respected its rules and authority were welcome. Expulsions and nationalizations were part of a larger strategy: Niger's modern declaration of independence. The government mandated that companies prioritize Nigerian workers and use local goods and services. Nationalizing the Somer uranium mine was the boldest move, aiming to ensure wealth-funded schools, hospitals, and infrastructure. The junta was betting it could manage these assets better than foreign companies. It was a high-stakes gamble for self-reliance and national pride. The future would reveal if this vision could deliver real prosperity. For ordinary Nigerians, these changes brought hope and hardship. Many celebrated the end of foreign dominance and the promise of better jobs. But sanctions and the exit of aid groups led to shortages and higher costs. Vulnerable communities felt the loss of humanitarian support. Security remains a concern, with the withdrawal of Western forces creating a vacuum. The new Russian-backed alliance is untested and rural areas remain at risk. Optimism about economic empowerment is tempered by daily struggles. The true test will be whether the junta's promises translate into real improvements for Niger's people. Niger stands at a crossroads, full of promise but fraught with risk. Success depends on managing nationalized industries and building a strong local economy. But the loss of Western expertise and aid could slow progress. Security is another challenge. The Sahel remains volatile, and the new alliances are unproven. The government's gamble could bring prosperity or instability. Niger's leaders have ignited national pride but must now deliver results. The world is watching to see if Niger can turn its bold vision into reality. For the first time, Nigerians feel their future is in their own hands.